Hold on, don't start yet. I'll just tell you.
Hello, we are the Voices of Experience, four pals from Toronto, Canada. All of us with quite a few miles traveled already down life's highway. While that may not translate directly into voices of wisdom, we can promise you an entertaining half hour of discussion on a wide range of topics of current interest. So, sojourn with us for a while. You'll hear a variety of points of view. You'll be amused, you'll be provoked, you'll be stimulated. And now let me pass the word along to Al Brown. Mr. Brown?
Thank you very much, Andrew. Good day, ladies and gentlemen, our viewers. My name is Al Brown. I will be leading this discussion. Joining me is Andrew Wood, who just gave our introduction, Surab Sandhu, wave sound, Surab, and Mario Kyriakides. We are at a time of the year, this year, when politics has become an important issue, American politics. So we've chosen today as our topic to give you a Canadian perspective on American politics. Canada and the United States are almost very much alike in this subject, but there are key differences. And the American system often is a point of controversy for Canadians because our economy is tied so greatly to that of the US. Now, before we start our discussions, I would just like to give a bit of a background of what I mean by this, what the basic differences are. Canada has a constitutional monarchy in which the Queen Elizabeth II of England is the head of state. We have a House of Commons and a Senate. The United States is a republic. Their head of state is a president who is elected. They also have a Congress, which is equivalent to our House of Commons, and a Senate. Other key difference between the two systems is our Senate is not elected, it's appointed. The American system is elected. So those are the key differences, but they're very, very similar. What people do with the system, with this political system, is a lot different in both countries. Now, I'm going to ask each of my friends here to give their impression on what they see as the differences between the Canadian and American experiences in politics. And to lead this off, I'd like to ask Mario Kyriakides, because he does a lot of business in the United States. Mario, give us your opinion, please.
Well, thank you very much, Al, and to everybody, how you doing, eh? How are things down there in all good old USA? But I got to tell you, as a Canadian, we really, really, really love our brothers and sisters and cousins down below. And, the US, as Robin Williams once used to say, the United States is one nation above Mexico and under Canada. And I always love that. But I got to tell you, we are very close. Okay, I mean, yes, the system is different. As Al Brown identified, we are more of a constitutional monarchy with a parliamentary system, and the United States has a republic. I'll add one more thing to what you said, Al, that there is another branch in the U.S. system, which is the judicial branch, which is where the judges in the Supreme Court and all that is part of it. And there is definitely a difference. From an electorate perspective, though, the mindset isn't very different. the mindset typically is party oriented for those who go to the polls to elect a candidate. And then it's the same here. You know, we have multiple parties here as opposed to a two-party system in the United States, or sometimes a three-party system if you include an independent party. But the difference, the similarity is, forgive me, the similarity is that they vote for their particular interest. Each person that belongs to a party will vote to their particular interest, and that's fine, right? That's why the parties are there. They're supposed to represent a segment of population, protecting the interests of that particular population. However, where the problem comes in, and what we're seeing in both countries, more so in the United States, is that over the past 20, 30 years, there has been a polarization where both parties in the States are going to the extremes. And we're seeing it here too. And with the advent of social media, people are getting more and more fed information and misinformation many times that only fits that particular polarized view. And they immediately discount the other side. And then the chasm starts, and if one person is turning against each other and basically calling the other person a traitor and the other person an idiot. So there seems to be a lot of that going on lately. And this is reflected in the elections that we're seeing in the United States today. I'm going to add more to it, but right now I'll just leave it at that and pass it on to Al or to Andrew or Sarah, whoever.
Yeah. Sarab, give us your opinion of the differences. Sound.
Well, the differences will be there. They are there. But I have one big question regarding this. I don't understand the electoral college. Maybe you go come later to that, but that is totally confusing to me. And because Mr. Trump won from Hillary because of the electoral college thing, but she had more votes. So that's my concern. Our Canadian is just like a democracy. Like they select the party's nominee, and then you have, as you explained, a simpler form of government. But there it's the heart of democracy, supposedly United States, but they have a very peculiar system. I was trying to read it, but I really can't understand it. Mario, you got to tell me that.
Andrew.
Yeah, hi everyone. Well, let me start by presenting my own American credentials to some degree. I have lived and worked in the United States for a period of time. Admittedly, many years ago, when I was a young student, I went to school at NYU, New York University, and I married my wife there. My children are dual Canadian American citizens.
I thought the
And
government
I've had
cut
many,
them off
many
there.
an occasion to travel back and forth to the Washington area, as a matter of fact. Yeah, where my extended family lives in the Maryland side of it. So I do have some American credentials, but I will tell you, I have been following the story of Mr. Trump with fascination on a daily basis ever since he took that ride down the Golden Escalator in 2015. That was a significant moment in American history, although it probably wasn't particularly appreciated at the time. And in the meantime, it's 5 years later now. I've been following that story with fascination and horror. As many another person, I do not understand, first of all, how the Americans could have elected such an obvious charlatan, such an obvious showman and self-promoter with no regard or even no conception of the truth or the lie of things, no real desire to do the job of President of the United States, except, the photos and the parties and the meeting the people. So there you go. I'm not going to go on long about this, but I'm still, following it avidly, as are many Canadians, as it works its way towards a dramatic conclusion in 2 weeks with the election. And that's not going to be the end of it either. And I'm sure we're going to be talking about that as well. There will be mayhem out the other end of it. And I think the best thing that we from Canada can hope for is such a decisive Joe Biden victory that there is no room for Trump or the Republicans to claim foul on the victory. That's really what my major hope is.
Well, that's something that we will be discussing a little later, but I would like to stick for a moment to the subject of the differences between the American system. And there's two elements here I would like to bring up, which probably account for a lot of the problems or the differences in how the system performs. Firstly, in the United States, anybody can give an unlimited amount of money, as much as they want, to any candidate they wish, which means that anybody could potentially, with enough money, make it to be president or congressman or senator. It's just a matter of applying the money. The second thing is that they have fixed elections every 2 and 4 years. Every 4 years for the president, every 2 years for sections of the Senate and the Congress. Every 2 years, a number of these seats come up for election. Now, what does this actually mean? Well, it means, I think, firstly, that the big parties, the two-party system can dominate, and there's really no room for smaller parties. In the 19th century, there were a number of secondary parties in the American system, but there aren't anymore, and there haven't been for well over 100 years, simply because of lack of control of money. In Canada, we have now a system where the maximum that corporate donations to any political party are simply not allowed. And the maximum an individual can donate is about $1,600 Canadian to a candidate and $1,600 to a party. That's it. Which means that parties are dependent on going to the people rather than to the corporations for the big money that they need to run their campaigns. At the same time, on top of this, there's no limit to the amount of money that a party can throw at an election, where here in Canada, there is a limit. And it's based really on the amount of time that a campaign runs. For example, if a campaign is 4 weeks, it's say $20 million. If the campaign runs 8 weeks, it's $40 million. That's how our system works, and that makes a difference. Andrew.
I just wanted to highlight something you just said, Al, because it's important. Our elections tend to run 4 weeks. American elections run the entire year before especially the presidential one, if not 2 years before. And I think that's a crucial difference right there.
It is. And the thing is, we don't necessarily know when we're going to have an election. For example, in Canada right now, and later today, we may find out that Canadian government is going towards an election. The reason being is that there is a motion going to the Canadian Parliament because we have what's called a minority government. Now, if the motion passes, it effectively will trigger an election. In the United States, the fact that they have fixed elections every 4 years for the president means they can plan well ahead as to what's going on. We had an election last year, 1 year to this day. So nobody was expecting another, but that's what's likely to happen. And it's very difficult, therefore, in our country to plan ahead. In fact, it was only about 15 years ago that our government adopted a fixed term for parliamentary elections. Before that, a leader could call an election at any time they wanted, when he thought it was right, which often backfires against them. But an election was required every 5 years, but it could be done earlier. Under Prime Minister Harper, the election was fixed every 4 years, which looks very American to me, but we can still have one on short notice. Mario, what do you think of that?
Look, the truth is that the systems are very different. Both systems have many problems, okay? The fact that the Canadian system allows for a minority government to exist That has its good parts and it has its bad parts. The good parts is that you can always have the ability to compromise with another party and basically look at the other people's interests as well as not only your constituency. The problem is that when politics come in there, you have then the attempt to drop or to basically prevent that government from being able to operate properly, and in a sense pushing to a degree that that basically the government will fall, right? Which is what we're facing right now with Canada. And during the worst possible times, by the way, we're in the middle of a COVID crisis, and now we're going to go back to the polls. That adds a whole new issue. What I want to say to this is though this: there has to be reform, and I'm talking about not only in the U.S. but also here in Canada. We have to remove the money. We have to remove the money from this. It has to be public money out of the public purse that comes out and funds elections. Period. They have a set amount of money. They use that amount of money. No external donations, no external influences, and you go ahead and you proceed that way. If somebody is caught with their hands in the cookie jar, you send them to jail. You prosecute those people.
You're
It's
dreaming, Mr. Karakides. You're
Well, I may
dreaming.
be
That'll
dreaming,
never
but-
happen in the U.S.
It might be dreaming, but let me put it to you this way: a dysfunctional system. We are so easy to support a dysfunction as opposed to trying to find a solution to it. The solution is very simple in the United States. If you really look at it, the United States, term limits in everything: Congress, Senate, judiciary, the whole thing. This whole thing in the United States that's going on right now with Supreme Court, that's a lifetime appointment, folks. That is where some of the reforms have to come in. And yeah, even at what Sarab said earlier with the Electoral College, scholars can't figure it out. Constitutional scholars can't figure out why that is. It was put in place at one point for the American people to be equally represented, especially when you were talking about rural communities, but things have changed and that has to change. And yes, change the system. Even if it's a pipe dream right now, little steps can get you to that goal.
Mario, I read a story that was in another document a few years, just recently, and it said that the Electoral College was brought into being to satisfy the southern U.S. states at the time of just after their revolution, when they were establishing a government and a constitution. I don't know the particulars about it, but I've also seen another study that says, on balance, it gives the same results as if there was a direct election, with one exception, which we can get to at the latter part of this discussion. But I'd like to move on to something now that we're talking, that Andrew has mentioned on, which is election at the core of this discussion, really. In less than 2 weeks, or about 2 weeks, the government, the United States, people of the United States will decide, will know who their new president is, assuming, of course, that the election results are decisive. However, there's been a lot of mail-in voting at this time, and there's a possibility that may cause a delay in the actual results. It remains to be seen. Sarab, what are your comments with regards to the election?
Well, elections come and go. These are the kings which are formed by us, and they either do the work or not. I'm still stuck with Electoral College. I don't know why, because I read about it. It's something to do with slavery, because
Yes.
when they had less representation from the slaves in that particular, they gave so many votes because their territory was large, so they gave so many votes to them, and this is still carried on similarly from that time onwards. But you see, this working for the people, when you're serving the people as a president, it has to be, you have to serve. But many times it is, most of the countries, not many people do that. And especially here in America, what we found, Trump, though I like him very much, but he used his own personal persona more than what the country required. He was making decisions which we thought were different, how we would have taken, but we are not in that position. So he took that decision, and we are taking he did a wrong decision. But this is one way of doing it. There are infinite ways of doing things. And having said that, he raised $1 billion in this election and out of that, I was reading today, but 350 went to his personal account, which a numbered company in Delaware, and all those things. So these sort of things happen. But I think Biden, in this case, let's say who's going to win. I think Biden is going to win. What do you say?
Well, are you telling me that Trump's being guaranteed a golden handshake of $350 million if he loses?
Yeah.
Well, let's give him another $1 billion just to get rid of him and move on.
Let me tap into this, because I think it's very important to understand why this is happening. Okay, there are two reasons why Trump got elected, and one, and why people go to the polls, and specifically to Trump. One is party first, right? So if you look at the Republican, you look at the Democrat Party, they're going to be voting on basically the ideology of their particular party, whether that is for Republicans, abortion issues, gun issues, whatever the case may be. And they're going to dogmatically follow whoever is leading that particular party, no matter who it is, whether it's Trump or anybody else, the vote is going to go there. The second aspect of that is people who believe that Trump was a successful businessman and that his business acumen would be able to take the United States into from a dysfunctional government to a business-oriented enterprise. The problem there is that the U.S. government is not a business, okay? The U.S. system is structured into three different branches, all of them co-equal. And when you have those three branches co-equal, they're not part of the same business. They're like customers. And they have to be able to interact with each other and being able to compromise with each other, because if you go and strong arm a customer, you're not going to have that relationship with that customer. And this is where Trump fails, because Trump has been brought up into a company where he inherited his business from his father. He has always had the upper arm because of the billions of dollars that company has and reputation that it has, so he could get his way. The problem is the moment he comes to compromise, he can't. He calls himself a great negotiator, but we have seen the problems come in that he can't, because he's always been negotiating from a position of strength. And now when he's at a position of equality with others, we can't do it. So he starts to blame the media. He starts to blame everybody else except the fact that he can't do the job. And that is where the problem comes in. Yes, Andrew.
Yeah, even more than that, though, Mario. The bottom line, and you've seen this in the Washington Post and the New York Times lately, exposed, is that he doesn't really want to do the job, not the actual hard job of making decisions on behalf of the American people. He's in it for himself. He's in it for the ego. For him, it's an extension of his persona for the TV show. I mean, it's just a logical next step with a wider audience. And if people don't understand that, then they don't understand something very profound. And the other thing I'd like to make this point as well, if I may, is that one other thing that is motivating him is fear, abject fear. He is not as rich as he makes out to be. He owes directly and personally, they say, $400 million or more to some unknown creditor. And also, with all the legal challenges that he's had over the past few years that he's been able to dodge as president of the United States. And we're talking about accusations of rape and sexual assault. So he is afraid on both of those two counts that he's going to be called to pay for his sins against society, in other words, face criminal charges, and he's going to owe these hundreds of millions of dollars. So for him, the re-election is crucial to stave off that that day of reckoning. And so if anyone doesn't understand that this is deeply personal and based on fear, then they're not really looking at the reality of it.
Oh, I
Well,
agree.
that's
He also,
okay.
he also said, let me just add this. He also hinted the fact that if he loses to Biden, he's going to leave the country. So are we talking about a flee from? You better find somewhere there's no extradition policy. I got to tell you.
Okay,
Yeah,
gentlemen. So Trump is running scared, but he could still win the election. What about Biden? How well is he holding up in this election? Will he get the votes? I mean, that's a big question here. He's a 78-year-old man. You know, the only reason I think he came into this election is because he was the best chance that Democrats have of unseating Trump.
The least offensive candidate.
Yes,
Yeah.
but he's an old man. What do we? I remember back when we had John F. Kennedy. He was about the youngest president they've ever had, which was, I think he was in his 40s.
Early
Unfortunately,
40s.
he didn't last, but why would the Americans want to? Well, they're both old farts, really, when you think of it. Trump's 72, as far as I
No,
understand.
older, 74.
74 versus 78. Who do you think will win the election, and will they die in office?
Well, let's put it this way. Go ahead, Sarah, but I don't want to cut you off.
I didn't speak, but I was muted. It was Kamala Harris is going to be the winner in all this, because when Biden, after 2 years, he doesn't make it, then she becomes the president.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, let's put it this way. Biden is going to come in, unfortunately, as a healer. And I'm saying unfortunately because we didn't have to be here where we are today in that country, and it's sad to see that. Obama did that before with him as vice president, and now we have to pull out of a second economic debacle because of COVID, but also mismanagement from the party itself, and the egos that are involved and the politics that are involved. So yeah, he's probably, no matter whether he dies in office or he survives office, he's going to be a one-term president. I don't see him doing any more than that. And yeah, there's a possibility that Kamala will run after him, or she may be the first woman that succeeds a president that's in office still. I think that it's time for new ideas to come out. I think that Bernie Sanders was just too far left for Americans to adhere to that kind of ideology, but also the Tea Party that is controlling the Republican Party is too far right. So there has to be somebody in the middle.
Gentlemen, I'd like to move their discussion on to some unique elements of the American system. One of them was made aware to me by a couple from North Carolina when I was hiking with them about a few years ago. They said they were tired of the way the American government was run because nothing was happening. It was paralyzed. If the Democrats run Congress and the Republicans run the Senate, as it is now set up, nothing gets done because both are of equal power. Both parties must agree with on a piece of legislation before it can be passed. And if one group does not agree with the legislation, which was recently an impeachment of Trump, it dies in that particular house. Another thing I would like to talk about, we should maybe discuss, is the issue of gerrymandering. I don't know whether you know what it is, but basically it's a unique American institution that was created about 200 years ago. And it persists today, although in many jurisdictions it's being eliminated. And this one actually leads a little bit to the issue of the Electoral College because of what it does. So let's start the discussion on gerrymandering. Andrew?
Well, let me correct first of all. you did say it's a uniquely American thing, and actually that's not so. We in Canada suffered for a long, long time, generations, for the same thing. And actually, it's an Irish term. So it comes from Ireland, gerrymander. Anyway, but we legislated against it. We managed to create laws where it was no longer legal to do that kind of thing. And there's a commission. There's actually a body here in Canada that will redraw electoral boundaries when populations shift as they do and things advance. And the whole thing, of course, is in the US again, that's part of their system where it is so, the corruption is down deep. It is down very deep. And I do not see any easy way where these people are going to give up their pensions or redrawing electoral boundaries to create advantage for their parties. And it makes a difference. Wisconsin is one example, and there are others where a majority of the citizens in recent elections vote Democrat. That's what happens. The majority of Americans do tend to vote Democrat, but Republicans are returned in greater numbers. And why is that? Well, it's the gerrymandering. So the point is it works. And something that works so well for the Republicans is not going to be surrendered lightly by them. And of course, when the Democrats come in, they can turn that tool to their own uses. So I don't know. It's cynical. It's politics.
The United States tends to be polarized, where the majority of the states that vote Democrat are California and a few and the West Coast. Those states that still involve gerrymandering tend to be the Republican ones. Whereas, as I understand it, California and New York don't do that anymore, or they're moving away from it. Mario, your comments?
Well, my comment is absolute power corrupts absolutely. And when there is an issue with different parties controlling a specific area, especially when the governors themselves have the authority to redistrict, because that's what it is, right? Gerrymandering is basically redistricting to put more people of your particular party's choice in a particular district. That way you get an electoral college majority within your particular state. The problem is that power will make you, the desire for power will make you want to hold on to that power. And that is where the problem comes in. Now, you have, as you mentioned, California being a populous state, and a lot of the voices in California were silenced because of the way the elections went last year. I mean, Hillary, even though Hillary has, not a very nice taste to many people as far as her politics, personality, and all that kind of stuff, it made many people pinch the nose to vote for her. She still got 2 million votes more than 3 million votes more than Trump did. And a lot of those people were silenced because of the gerrymandering. And that's sad.
Yeah.
So there has to be a change, going to popular votes, something. And that's where scholars are trying to take this to. And we're not scholars.
We're going to have to wrap up here. And I'd like to give to Sarab one final comment on this.
Well, all I can say is, remember, make America great again. He did it for the people, not for himself. But the China debacle, the trade issues, he did good stuff. But in the end, he did everything for American people, so-called, but he also did it for himself. So having said that, let's see what happens November 3rd and who becomes the next president. And moreover, the stock market is going up and down because of this. I lost a little bit of money, and they say it's going to go 5% down if Biden wins, and it's going to go 5% up if Trump wins. So I don't know.
Go up even more, and then by the end of the pandemic. Andrew, any comments?
Well, I do have to take issue with what Sarab just said, and it sounds like we're going to have a little bit of debate after the end the session button is done here. I am not going to give Mr. Trump any credit for anything that has been accomplished. Anything that's been accomplished is not because of him, it's in spite of him and despite him. And of course, we can have that argument, and perhaps there have been some positive developments, but it is not because of anything that Donald Trump has brought to the table. It is people working in spite of him. And as I think I said at the very beginning of this podcast, the best thing that I feel, and I think most Canadians feel, is if the Biden win, because it's clear with a 11, 12-point lead right now, that Biden will take it. But will he take it convincingly enough so that there is no real argument from the pro-Trumpers as to, you know, upsetting the verdict? And I'll just finish with this, is that I'm sure there will be strife after November 3rd. I'm sure there will be a civil unrest, and I'm also very sure that there will be bloodshed. I am sure that there will be some blood shed, and that blood is directly at the feet of Mr. Trump.
Yep, I agree with that, and let me close my particular portion up with just saying what Barack Obama is so famous of saying: vote. Get out there and vote. To all the Americans, get out there and vote. I don't care which party you vote for. Just vote. Exercise your constitutional duty to vote. And when you do that, okay, then you have the right, okay, to talk. If you don't have the right to talk. And that is where the problem comes in. A lot of people just don't vote. 110 million people out in the United States voted during the last election. 110 million to determine the outcome for 350 million people. That's ridiculous. That's sad. Okay, so even if there's 220 or so million people, you got to get out to vote. And that goes for Canada too. Don't gripe, vote.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. And ladies and gentlemen, viewers, I hope you've enjoyed our discussion today. This is a fertile topic. Maybe we could go further on it, but the election will be in 2 weeks, and we've got other subjects to come up with in future. And maybe this is just enough.
We'll revisit this because there will be civil unrest. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.